Hello and welcome to the Smells Like Infinite Sadness podcast. I'm your host, Michael Taylor. For those of you who don't know, I run the website, smellslikeinfinitesadness.com. It's a blog covering the best alternative rock from the 80s and 90s up to present day. I'm a proud middle-aged Gen Xer who is still obsessed with the music of his youth and loves to talk about it. And today I'll be speaking with Trevor Dunn, the bassist and multi-instrumentalist best known for his work in the experimental rock group Mr. Bungle, as well as working with Tomahawk, Fantomas, the Melvins, Mad Love, Nels Cline, and many more. Dunn is back with, and forgive me, I'm probably going to butcher this, merdeka atau. It's a debut album from SpermChurch, his new project with the late musician Sannety. It's an experimental project that uses electronics, percussion, and is listed in the press release as containing elements of abstraction and trap music, battling cultural conditioning with non-traditional tunings, glissandos, percussion, and a max MSP patch, using minimal elements to play with a lot of bass and drums, and bass mostly. We turn patterns inside out. In today's interview, Dunn discusses the origins of SpermChurch, what it's like to promote an album in the wake of Sannety's passing, sonic approach behind the new release, launching his new label Riverworm Records, the future of Mr. Bungle, and much more. So check out the interview and stay tuned afterwards. I'll be playing a song off the new album. Well, I guess we'll go and get started here. First off, I want to say I'm really enjoying the new SpermChurch album a lot. I'm probably going to butcher this title, but merdeka atau. Is that even close to being right?
Well, honestly, I don't know. It's Indonesian, and I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced. It doesn't matter. I think this might have been in the press release. It means live free or die. And then I crossed out the middle word, which is the or part, because you can't really make a choice of doing one or the other. You kind of have to die either way.
Well, I know that this is a collaboration between you and the musician Sannety. Yeah. When did you two discover each other, and what inspired you to work together? How did that come about?
I met her probably I want to say like 10 years ago or something, and she was actually a trumpet player originally, and was involved in like improvised music scene in the Netherlands. And we had several mutual friends in common, and just known her for years. And then at a certain point, she got kind of lost her connection with the trumpet and decided to become an electronic musician, and developed its really complex sequencer, drum machine in Max MSP. And I mean, it's funny. The name of the band SpermChurch kind of was the first thing that happened. We came across it when we both sort of misread a street sign, North Jersey, when we were hiking, and we saw that we passed by the sign, and I think I remember I said, "Did that sign just say SpermChurch?" And I think it said something like Spring Church or Springfield or something, but. We thought, man, that's a great name for a band. Okay, let's start a band. And then eventually we kind of had to figure out what that was going to be, how are we going to make electric bass and electronics kind of fit together. I mean, I also kind of experimented with upright bass a few times, but it took a lot of kind of back and forth and just trying to figure out what it would be without it. We wanted to be, we're not going to be like a trap band or something, but and we also didn't want to just be like an improvised duo. We wanted to have flexibility with the music, but also kind of not just be completely free, because I don't know, there's a lot of connotations with with just free music. It's fun to do sometimes, but more than often than not, it sounds terrible. Neither of us really listen to it, just for fun. So like, how can we have that kind of flexibility in live, but maintain some kind of structure?
Well, you mentioned that, and I was looking at the press release too, talking about how you chose the instruments for the album. Did you kind of come up with like a certain amount of limitations for, like, we're only going to use this, and that, or were you kind of more open to things just going as it went, or how did you kind of decide on the format for how you're going to work together?
Kind of, we're actually trying to give ourselves a lot of limitations, like kind of make lists of parameters, whether it was like, the obvious ones are, like, tempo and pitch and, bending versus not bending, or pedals versus not pedals, or, for me, like using a pick or using my finger, like trying to like organize things systematically and have reasons for applying them, essentially. So kind of trying to come up with some sort of algorithm, I guess, and not, and also for me as a bass player, stepping outside of just a traditional like bass player role. Like I didn't want to just come up with some funky bass lines for her trap beats. I wanted to like, what can I do here to, use sound and noise even to create some kind of flow. Definitely kind of the most sort of noise oriented thing I've ever done, really, other than like chaotic improvising on my upright bass. But
well, you were talking about the English translation of the album title, and I would imagine that would have, I guess, extra significance given the fact that Sannety passed away. And
yeah, well, actually, to be honest, that so she was half Indonesian, half Dutch, and that phrase comes from, it was basically the Indonesians' sort of mantra when the Dutch were colonizing. So she was sort of embodied the oppressor and the oppressed at the same time, and she had that phrase tattooed on her arm. Oh, wow. And then it was actually her idea. For her, it was almost kind of a joke, I think. But at one point she told me that she was thinking about having that middle word crossed out, and which is when I decided to name the record this, which is sort of, obviously a tribute to her. I decided I'm going to do that. That's her idea. I'm going to do that, and yes, it certainly does have a lot of kind of heavy significance there. Yeah.
Well, I guess, does it feel weird to be promoting an album given that? And what did you think you learned from her as an artist? What would you think was the main thing you learned from her? And what do you think?
Wow. Well, first of all, yes, it is weird to be promoting a record like this, which obviously I've, never had to do. I don't know that. I mean, I'm sure some people have, of course, before me, but I mean, in terms of what I've learned to her, it's kind of that's a huge question. I mean, there's so much I can't even begin. I mean, she's first of all got me into electronic music in general, I would say, and really taught me how to just like challenge myself and approach things in a different way. I mean, I always kind of leaned toward that to a certain degree, but she was a really hard worker and really problem solver, and we definitely had two different ways of thinking and figuring things out. I tend to be a lot more kind of sort of like off the cuff kind of go with the flow kind of, let's just see how it turns out. And she was a lot more rigid, so we kind of, it was a good test for me, to try and figure these things out and think about approaches that don't come naturally to me. And I think that's a good thing in general, because I think that's good advice for anyone, because it's so typical for us as humans to fall into habits and patterns and do the things that are easy, Mm-hmm. I mean, and like I said, I mean, some of that challenging myself does come naturally. I mean, when I write music myself, I might write bass lines on a keyboard or something just to get myself away from the bass. And I mean, I've definitely written some of my favorite bass stuff on an instrument that wasn't bass, because I'm not falling into I'm going for the upright gesture here. But I'm falling into those physical habits of things that feel comfortable, things you're used to. I mean, damn, like pick up an instrument you don't know how to play. The old conference for me. And like, oh wow, let me screw around. I'm like, oh, I like the sound of that. How is that? What's that sound like if I play that on bass now? Whoa, I never would have thought of this. It's just takes you outside of the box, essentially.
And I'm looking here at my questions, and I noticed one of my favorite songs on the new album that I really got into a lot was, I want to get the title right, was "You Thoroughly Want the Thing That Mounts." I really like that one quite a bit.
Yeah.
And
I was, that title actually sort of came up by chance. A lot of the titles are phrases that her and I had written down over the years, just things in conversation that we thought that stuck out to us, and we would keep lists of stuff like that. That title, I wasn't sure what to call it, and then I was trying to do like this sort of phonetic play on her name, and I was messing around with different phrases and stuff in Spanish, and or even Google translating like French, I don't know, or whatever. And then I ended up speaking with a friend of mine who's like a Greek, like ancient Greek scholar essentially, and kind of said, "Hey, you have any words that would sound like this, Sana's name, like her whole formal name?" And that's the phrase that came up with. So if you say that Greek, which is printed on the record, if you say that, if anyone knows how to speak Greek and you say it out loud, it's going to sound like her name, and then that's the English translation. So,
oh wow,
yeah,
that's very cool.
Yeah. I was pretty happy with that when my friend, helped with that, because I think I don't know if it's modern. I think it's ancient Greek actually. So it's not something you typically run across, or for me as an American, I don't know anyone who speaks ancient Greek, so with the result, like the translation, I'm like, oh, that's perfect. That I wanted something that doesn't have to have any meaning. Like all the titles, are up for interpretation. Like, and that's kind of part of the concept of the band and our approach too, is like, shouldn't necessarily have any connotation. Like you can, come up with your own connotations. We're striving to battle cultural, yeah, I don't know, for lack of a better term, connotations or cultural habits or expectations, I guess, in our music and otherwise too, even personally. So, it's funny when people talk about improvised music, like, hey, I'm going to do this set of free music, but you almost can already hear it. There's a formula, even if it's totally free. Like, why can't that include a trap beat or a song form or something? Like, what if you improvise that? Not a lot of people go for that approach. Usually, it's like this skronk fest of chaotic energy and atonality, which is cool. I'm not dissing that at all, but just saying like this is patterns, this cultural thing, that's what free means, so live free / die. I mean, what does living free mean? This day and age, it's a huge question, so
yeah.
Everyone's got their opinions about what that actually means and what is freedom, like, oh, what, I don't know, last year at this time when people were bitching about not being able to get their hair cut,
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty so, sheltered. As a culture, we are.
Yeah.
Well, what I liked about the song, it kind of almost reminded me of Aphex Twin a little bit, just as far as the electronic aspects of it. And I like the way that the percussion almost had kind of a vocal quality to it, almost like a kind of a sing-song feel. So yeah. Was that one that was improvised at first, or was that written out, or was that kind of a mix between the two? Or
none of the music was ever written out. It was all, most of it generated within Sana's beats, in Max MSP. That one actually went through a lot of variations, and there's a lot of there's a vocalist that Sannety sampled, and so that's kind of the big part of that piece. And then like shifting it harmonically, I mean, that's a big thing that I did in that piece, was kind of building this thing that you're, like I I don't know, pivoting key centers and pivoting like where the one is, changing that. I mean, in a way, if like what I know about harmolodics, like Ornette Coleman's system of harmolodics, I feel like it has something akin to that. Whereas you could be playing, in a certain scale that has a root, let's say you're playing in, C Phrygian or something, and then all of a sudden the harmonics shift so that now the tonic the root becomes the third note of that scale. So, and you weren't expecting that. You're expecting things to resolve a certain way. And, I mean, that's kind of a compositional trick that composers, I think, have been using for years, but I don't know, to put it in this context with electronics and samples and beats, yeah, I think that's all kind of plays into how we were creating the music.
And there's also a couple of other songs that had vocals on it. It kind of used more texturally because you've got Martyrs, Badgers, Other Rodents, and then Plenty of Time that kind of used those as well. Was it always kind of designed as an instrumental album, though? Did you ever think about bringing in a vocalist or just using it as kind of like another element, but not in the forefront?
We did, actually. We toyed with having someone kind of sing hooks, We're definitely into the concept of like this idea of a hook. Something that's very catchy, even in context of it being, somewhat obscure music. We wanted this idea of hooks and vocalists. But yeah, basically we ended up just, I think in Martyrs, it might be there's samples of some kind of ritual, like indigenous, like ritual music, as well as some gamelan stuff, and yeah. And to be honest, some of the stuff that Sannety sampled, I'm not 100% sure what it is. That was kind of all within her language, within her. It's like she didn't worry about what pedals I was using, and I didn't worry about what she, that's we're focused in our own worlds there, and then like, how can we make those things fit together?
And speaking of that, I was also reading that there was a new software instrument that was used for the album that kind of used algorithms for percussive elements.
That was her sequencer, yeah, that I was talking about. I mean, it was it was housed in like MSP, and she was using now I'm spacing on, not Super Collider, but one of these programs, so. But then she was working with a Dutch programmer and creating this, web of basically being able to take layers of sound and manipulate them individually, especially in terms of tempo. And she would like squash certain things. She could take a rhythmic figure and expand it, but keep it on this grid. But the way she's kind of messing with it, it doesn't sound like it's on a grid. And then being able to improvise with that quickly. So a lot of times she would come up with something and then basically record herself kind of jamming until she liked it, and then be like, oh yeah, okay, here's this, these beats that are sort of like evolving in a certain way and doing things you don't expect. And most of that, I would say like 98% of all that is over my head. Yeah. I mean, I'm a bass player, I mean, I understand rhythm and that was a lot of stuff we worked on was kind of that, like me sort of like getting into the core of what she was doing rhythmically and how can I, adjust to that intuitively, but also know what's underlying there and knowing how to, navigate it and get around it.
And I know that you chose specific pedals for that, and you said you kind of broke out your comfort zone as far as not of what you played on the album. What was I guess the most rewarding part as far as coming up with something that you hadn't really done before, as far as your approach to recording?
I mean, it was super fun because normally, if someone gives me, as a bass player, someone gives me music and says, "Hey, we need a bass part on this." It's pretty clear. Like, okay, am I gonna like double the guitar here, or maybe I'll come up with some counterpoint, or maybe I'll focus on like, the rhythm with the drums or whatever it is. And in this instance, I was able to, normally if I use pedals with any rock band, even if there's improvising involved, it's pretty limited. I use, distortion, octaver, sometimes some kind of granular loop thing for the weirdness, But with SpermChurch, I was adding I had a huge array of pedals, and so I could set up a couple different loops at the same time, and manipulate them separately, and that was totally rewarding for me. It was really fun. It was like I had that was my sort of computer in a way, and I'm very much in the knob world, and with that, and I think the second track, What Street Is This? I mean, you can't tell it's bass, but that a lot of that kind of weird bendy sine wave stuff is all bass. That's me kind of
wow.
creating. Basically, I created one sound, a hit, one note, and then I'm able to kind of get a couple different things going, chasing each other, and I mean, live it looked, I would hit this note, and then I'd be bent over with my pedals the whole time, and that was definitely out of my comfort zone, and relying on that more than sometimes more than actually holding down a groove or being technical or something. It's a totally different technique for me, but I've learned a lot doing it, and it's something I want to continue doing in the future.
And you're releasing this album on your new label, Riverworm Records, and you definitely picked an interesting time to start a record label, given
a good friend of mine just texted me today because she's in California, and she knew about this flooding that was happening. She's like, "So what's up with the floods and starting a label during end times?" And I mean, I really want this record to be. I wanted to put it out there, partly because I just want people to hear what Sannety has been doing, and I mean, for that in particular, I highly recommend her website, Sannety.com, because there's a lot of her other stuff on there. But I shopped this. We finished the record and we mixed it in March of 2020, and right before the shit hit the fan, and then I shopped it around for a while, and I don't have a lot of leads in the electronic music world, so there was a lot of shots in the dark. There were definitely some kind of bigger electronic labels I thought would have been great on, but that's how that goes. It harked back to my days in the 90s, sending out cassette tapes of my own stuff to record labels and just getting tumbleweeds back. I mean, I'm very humble person. I don't I wasn't expecting, some huge label to be pounding on my door, but I did have some really encouraging feedback from some people who have their own DIY labels. And, after talking to them, it just seemed to make more sense that I just, instead of using their brand to put out my record and then splitting the cost with them, why not just do it myself? Hopefully I'm at a point in my career where I can kind of have my own brand, so I'm not exactly sure how in depth I'm going to go with this label. I have some plans for a few more things of my own I would put out. Maybe I'll put out other people's stuff. I'm not really sure, but it's kind of just Island of Misfits. I always think of that Christmas special, which
Rudolph.
is where and it's this is where the weirdos go on this island. And I'm already on an island of misfits. Ipecac Records is an island of misfits, but this is a little archipelago, I guess. I have to take the ferry out to the main island, and then I have to get in a canoe and go out to my little niche island. and I'm happy. It's fun doing it. I'm screw it. I want this out there. If I can get some people to check it out, then that's great.
Well, what do you think's been the biggest challenge? What's been the most rewarding part for you for starting a label so far? What do you think's that's kind of stood out to you?
I think one thing that stood out was when I got the CDs in the mail, because I mean, I've certainly had that experience before with the records that I'm involved in, and you're not sure how it's going to turn out when you actually get the physical thing in your hands. But to really be involved from the get-go with this, I had a good friend help me out with the layout and the artwork and all that stuff. But when I actually, and went a little over the, a little extra expense was having the gold foil on the CD itself for the titles. And when I actually opened that up and saw that it was exactly what I had in mind, and it kind of has, it's kind of got this bling element to it, I think, which goes with some of the music. And I was so happy that it came out looking really good, I mean, the music is one thing. That's something I've already been thinking about for years, and I'm kind of already over that, which is typical with any kind of music I'm involved in. Like when it finally is released, I'm already like, man, I've heard this a million times,
To move on.
But to get the artwork, that's like the new thing, that's new to me. And like, oh my God, this is great. This is perfect. So that was a big thing. And, my little logo, my Riverworm logo that my friend helped me design, and which is based on a drawing that Sannety made years ago. All that is like a tribute to her. So it's all that was very rewarding. Yeah.
So you said you kind of have your island of misfit toys. You mentioned, do you have anything already lined up for release on the label after this, or still kind of thinking that through? Or
I think the next thing I'm going to do is I did some film music for this art film, this guy in New Zealand actually, and I think it's about 40 minutes worth of music, and it's I think I'm going to release that just digitally, because already like film music is not a big seller, so I figure and I don't know anywhere where I could shop that around, so that's kind of perfect for my own label. I mean, I have my own Bandcamp that I've been putting on stuff on for the last couple of years, but I'm sort of from now on, it'll be the SpermChurch. I mean, it'll be the Riverworm label, with any weird thing that I'm doing that I don't think, rightly so, no one else is going to put out. No one else is going to make any money off of me doing that. So I might as well just do it myself. And I mean, I'm actually I'm writing out charts right now for my next Trio Convulsion record, which I think I'm going to not put on my label. I think I have a friend who started a label recently. I'm not going to mention it yet because it's not solidified, but I think it'll be a better home for it. It's things. There are all these little islands of misfits, and that's why so many people have their DIY labels. And you kind of have to the right label to access whatever canoe party is coming to that island.
Well, I did just really briefly want to touch on Mr. Bungle real quick. Given last year's release of The Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny, was that really satisfying to finally get like an official recording of your demo tape and get to kind of revisit that? Was that?
It totally was. That kind of been a dream of mine for a while. And, when I presented that to the rest of the band, I was surprised that everyone was like, yeah, we're totally, Mike and Trey in particular, I was like, man, I got this crazy idea. What if we did that? Because I think it's something that the three of us always referred to, even when we were an active band in the 90s, we occasionally would cover a song or parts of a song from that demo. Nobody knew what it was, but, like, man, let's play some of this metal again that we wrote, so, having it in this kind of like crystal clear package for once, it was totally satisfying. And it was also super satisfying to be back in the recording studio with those guys, and also Dave and Scott, who were like super fun to work with. It was very, it was cool to get back in the studio with Mike and Trey, and after so many years, and just being like, oh yeah, we've kind of grown up a little bit, and we can like, be a little bit more adult with the way we interact. I mean, that's like, man, I feel like that happens to everyone, like, you grow up together, there's weird, messy stuff happens. And then you're like, you know what? We were kids. We were idiots. So, well, but yeah, that was all that was really fun. Yeah.
Do you think, was there any like inspiration for any new material that came from that, or like
No, it was very much focused on that project, I mean, that's still sort of I guess there's still a bookmark on that page somewhere. But we've yet to open it to that page yet, I guess I guess you could say the possibility is still there. To what degree, I don't know. It's hard to say, but we still, all enjoy each other's company, and so so that speaks for a lot.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you guys, even though it was from your beginning, it was like you picked up where you left off from the very first. It's an interesting kind of way to get back into it. I don't think I've ever, there's no other band that's, I think, has attempted that as far as I know. So that's,
yeah, I mean, it's typical of us to be like, I mean, people have been asking us all, about a reunion or whatever for years, for the 20 years that we haven't been playing. And it's pretty typical of us to say like, oh, this is what you want. Okay, we're going to give you what you want. You want a reunion, So, I mean, we would do that at our live shows. People would want to request songs, and then we'd totally screw up the arrangement. I'm like, we played it at half tempo and threw some cover songs in the middle of it, but hey, we played it. So that's typical Bungle. I'm not really sure why that is, or, I don't know. It has something to do with where we grew up and how we grew up together, and being, trying to be open-minded in a really small town, and not letting ourselves get sucked into any one way of thinking, so, and it's also really fun. It's fun to get those reactions, even when people are critical, it's kind of hilarious. Like, when there were some, I made the mistake of reading some comments where people are like, this isn't the real Bungle, Mr. Bungle's those Warner Brothers records. And I'm like, okay, you're telling me what Bungle is, like, that's hilarious. I mean, I kind of get it, I guess if Cheap Trick came out with, and there was only one original member, and they turned into like a, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like a horrible funk metal band or something. I'd probably be up in arms. I'd be like, this isn't the real Cheap Trick, but also it's their band. They can do whatever they want. I just don't listen to it. So if I want the old Cheap Trick, I'll listen to the old Cheap Trick records, which I do anyway.
Well, I know the Delta variant's kind of throwing a wrench in the works with everything, but I know you guys have got some shows for Riot Fest in Chicago, but I was wondering if you have any more of those shows planned or anything else for other projects you're working on. I imagine it would be hard to do a SpermChurch thing live without Sannety to accompany you, but do you have any live plans for anything else, or are you still just kind of not really there yet?
Yeah, not totally there. I mean, these shows coming up in Chicago with Mr. Bungle are already kind of like, there's a couple weeks ago we were like, should we do this? So many artists are like pulling out just for concerns, So we had to consider that. And now we just found out that the venue where we're doing our side show is requiring proof of vax. So that actually makes us all a little more comfortable. We have, we're toying with some shows in around December, which I can't really talk about yet, and some stuff last year. I mean, the Raging Wrath version of Bungle we had before the pandemic hit. We were planning on doing a bunch of shows, so we're hoping that we can get back to some of that. In terms of like SpermChurch, there's probably not going to be a version of that with me playing the tracks, but there is a lot of material that I have that I could eventually kind of record and do something with, and present it as, Trevor Dunn's SpermChurch or something. I don't know. That's occurred to me, and kind of keeping her, it's super important for me to like keep her spirit alive. And so I want to, that's why I maintain her website and I try to like update it occasionally. And, cause she had a lot of really amazing, interesting ideas that were unfulfilled. So I have a lot of material to work with there, which I think I could do something with.
Very cool. Well, I guess that wraps up. My last question is there anything else you wanted to add about the new album? Or are there any other projects you want to promote that you're working on? Or is that pretty much anything else you could think of that you would like to?
Yeah, I don't have, aside from like this soundtrack thing I was talking about, which maybe I'll do, I'm not sure when maybe in a couple months or something, I'll release that. I commissioned several video artists to make videos for the SpermChurch record, and I've released 2 of them already. There's at least 2 more that I have already, and I'm waiting on a couple people. So I'm gonna just kind of continue to release those, just to kind of keep the momentum of that record going. And also, I think that that kind of music lends well to some visual element. And then the next thing after that is I'm recording Trio Convulsant with a added chamber quartet to it, which is it's a 7-piece ensemble, and I'm recording that in January.
Oh wow!
So when the time comes, I'll be trying to promote that as well. That's a thing that's probably not going to be on my label, but I'll be promoting it nonetheless.
Very cool. Well, thanks for taking the time out to talk to me today, Trevor. It's been a real pleasure. And
yeah, you bet. Appreciate it. Thanks for the interest and support.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good day. Thanks a lot.
All right. Take it easy.
Bye-bye. Big thanks to Trevor for taking the time out today for today's interview. You can buy the new SpermChurch record via his new label, which you can find at spermchurch.bandcamp.com. You keep track of all things Mr. Bungle at mrbungle.com. As promised, we're closing out with a song off the new album, so take a listen to the previously discussed You Thoroughly Want the Thing That Mounts. Give it a listen. I think you'll dig it. Until next time, stay safe and stay sane.